Back to Zero Gravity Live, the Weightless Weekly Tech Talk Show and podcast, bringing all the latest technical discussions right to you. I saw one of our members just disappeared for a second, but he'll be back. Don't worry, we'll figure it out. We're doing it live. Hey, speaking of doing it live, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to ring the bell and make sure that you subscribe to the channel. I know this is like typical YouTube stuff, but that is how you're going to keep track of the show, and the algorithm does not help us, so you must help yourself. Ring that bell, and if you're listening to this in podcast form, please leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choosing. We just launched the podcast last week, which is this, but in audio form, and we hope you're enjoying it. And we appreciate all the help that you can give us. And lastly, if you're watching us live, let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat of your choice. We see it all. Doesn't matter where you're watching from. So let us know where you're coming from, and we'll give you a big old shout out and thanks for joining us. Now, my name is Anthony Cusimano. I'm your host today. I'm joined by Matt Price and Sterling Wilson. He's in the ether somewhere. He is here. We just don't know where. Sterling is dialing in remote. He's not in his home office. So a little bit of technical difficulties, but we'll get him in here very shortly, and he will join in on the fun. Matt, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good, brother. I'm glad to see you're back on your feet and out from the temperature coma that you were in there for a week. I don't know if you watched last week, but I actually wore the Hawaiian shirt just for you, man, in your honor.
I missed it. Yeah, I know. I had a 101-degree fever for 4 straight days. Could not make last week's, but I did catch a few clips. I saw the live from the CDW office. That was awesome. Glad it turned out so well. Now, go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, yeah, hashtag DJI came through in the clutch. It was a great interview that we had there at the CDW office. You're right.
Love to hear it. Now, while we're waiting for Sterling to jump back in here, he says he's in backstage. Let's see if we can we bring him? Can we bring him up? Hey, Sterling, can you hear us?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
There he is.
Great to be here. Thanks for letting me in.
All right, glad to have you here. It only took a little minor act of the technical gods. We try to appease them where we can.
Hey, we're bringing this live. That's how we go, right?
That's exactly how we go. I was going to ask what's in your office, but clearly you're not in an office. Where are you today, Sterling?
I am in lovely Sacramento, California, coming to you guys live from an awesome event here. It's a CIO Academy conference where a bunch of like-minded technology professionals get together to share ideas on data security, on the security of information, and then, of course, what's new and what's coming. So we are here spreading the word to make sure that people know that it's easy to protect your data in the best way possible.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining us remotely. Super cool to have you here as always. Matt, now I know you got something cool in your office. What are you going to show us today?
Yeah, I've got all kinds of little gizmos. So, if you guys haven't been able to tell over the past few episodes, I definitely take pride in trying to have a really nice home office experience because, essentially the way I look at it is you spend the majority of your day right here for those of us who telecommute anyway. And it's like, this is your space. So I was browsing one day and came across one of these, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard or seen about this before, but it's called a MOVA globe. And let me bring up an actual camera I've got of it. So it's this little guy right here in front of my finger, right? And essentially what this thing is, and that's also a pan shot of my desktop, but essentially what this thing is you can get all different types of varieties, and literally the Earth's gravitational fields, as well as light and a couple other outside influences, literally cause this thing to spin perpetually. And what's really nice about this is, and you turn the lights off and things like that, you'll see it stop. And in the morning, I'll come down here and fire up the lights in the office, and it takes about 15, 20 minutes. And the thing will literally just start spinning on its own. And, that's a live shot of mine. But what I wanted to do now is actually bring up the website. So really cool tech. And I mean, they've got all different types of varieties of these too. But I just wanted to show you guys a bit more in detail about how this actually works. So you can see the Earth's magnetic field. You've got light. It's 2 shells. So basically you have the outer shell and then the inner shell that rotates inside. And I mean, you can get these things all the way from 4.5 inches, which is, I think, the size I got, the smallest one. But you can also get the giant, 8.5 inch diameter. and you
I
can
need
see
that
it.
melon in my life.
I was about to say they've got it compared to a watermelon right there. And like if you go back to like the main page here, I mean, they have like all different types of varieties of these, right? You can get the globe, the sun. I think I saw Jupiter in there, Mars. So for me, I came across this and I was like, I have to have that on my desk. I think that's super cool. My kids come in here and just stare at it like there's the basketball version. So anyway, just a really cool little, it doesn't do anything whatsoever. It's not tech at all. It's just science, which I think is really, really neat.
I love it. That's really cool. And I love anything that just appreciates round shapes in general. I'm a sucker for spheres, so that's a cool way to do them.
Yeah,
I was
Totally.
I'll share something. So hold on, I got to be a little ginger here. What I got semi-related to the no, well, I kind of related to the topic I'll bring up today. But this is actually a model I built of a Metal Gear Rex. So if you grew up in the 90s and you had a PlayStation, you probably played Metal Gear Solid, which is one of my all-time favorite games of all time. But this little model is it's kind of like a Gundam, if you've ever built a Gundam before.
Yeah.
You need a lot of pieces, a lot of clipping, a lot of hours of sanding and making things fit together perfectly. But this is probably my crowning achievement in the things that I have built. Took a long time and it turned out well. I would like to paint it one day because right now it's in the plastic form.
Oh, that's
You
not
can paint
painted?
them. No,
It looks like it's okay.
there is some color because the plastic is color, but it is not
Mm.
painted. I would like to actually do like a cool camo paint and make it look just like it does in the PlayStation game, and
How
maybe
long
even
does
give
that
it
take
like
to put together?
to build that one was probably at least 20 hours.
Oh,
I've
wow.
gotten pretty good at building. I've got a whole shelf built over there.
Nice.
So you do get faster and better and you start to pick up some tips, but I'm not a painter. So
Yeah.
that's going to be the thing I take up next. And I need to get a airbrush kit, and I'm not doing that in my office. I got to do that in the garage. So that requires a little bit of extra time, energy, and effort that I'm not ready for yet.
Totally get
But
that.
that's my pride and joy. Sterling, I don't know if you have anything you want to share beyond where you are, do you?
You know what? I really don't have too much.
Just
There's this
grab some off the
wonderful
shelf back there. They won't mind.
temple of books here that I would love to share with them. Now, I'm literally in an AC hotel in Sacramento, so nothing today. But I am rocking some of the kit we talked about before with the Osmo Pocket Cam and all that stuff. So ready to go.
I love it. Well, in that case, I'm going to chuck it right to you for the topics of the week. So, what do we got going on this week, Sterling?
For sure. Now I'm actually on site here, so if one of you gentlemen can share what I
Yes.
put up there, hopefully you can. But so listen to this. We love to keep things simple here. We love to make sure that we're getting the most out of what we have. What if, what if somebody told you that instead of going out and buying your brand new computer with brand new power, you're actually able to take your old computer and turn it into something much more powerful? Would you do it? Or would you go out and get the newer tech? Well,
Now, I
there is
saw
a
these ads in the 2000s where they asked me to download more RAM, and I did it. And then my parents always had to get a new computer. So, I don't know if I buy this, Sterling.
Oh boy, that's like back in the day when we were defragging our computer every other day. Is that what you're talking about? Oh man, those are the days. Essentially, here's the technology behind this. Modern day computers have GPUs, they have CPUs, and in some cases they have TPUs. Right? This company has found a way to multi-thread processes across all of these at one time. And a lot of times when you have some computational ask, it goes to the particular processing unit. And really, the two are not shared. And then there's ways that the information becomes unsiloed so that they can kind of use it together. This puts the threads across every single one of those, increasing the speeds monumentally. So this is a new way of taking old technology and repurposing it to make it much, much faster, much simpler, and also much more powerful. But the question is, would we eschew brand new tech? I mean, there's some sexy new tech out there that we want to have in our hands. Would you be okay staying with the old tech if you could make it better, or do we need to move forward with new designs?
I really like that question because that's sort of the age old, like, do you buy a new piece of hardware if you can make the old thing continue to work? And, like there's
Exactly.
the environmental aspect of that. But then
Exactly.
there's also the the practical aspects as well. Is like if we can optimize the software layer or do some magic like they're doing here by, just leveraging things that we didn't think of leveraging before in new and unique ways, can that lead towards innovation in places we didn't think about outside of just adding more processors, adding more heat and throughput to every little pin inside the thing? Like we always scale up, but this seems like a way that you can kind of scale out. And I think you need both, but I don't know if you lean into one or the other, or if you play both sides and like see what outpaces the other long term. What do you think, Matt?
This I love this idea. And this to me is, again, Sterling, you're going to love this, but I'm going to relate this back to Apple. So
Oh,
think about when everything was Intel or AMD, right? Intel or AMD, you kind of had the applications that were generally better for AMD processors because generally they had more cores. Intel was always better for gaming,
Yep.
generally speaking. But then you get Apple that comes to the party with Apple Silicon, and they've literally built programs exclusively designed for that type of chipset. And for me, this is kind of along that same vein. It's basically a manufacturer saying, look, we're going to allow you to essentially leverage all the computational horsepower that this machine has built in, but there's got to be support for it at the software layer. And perhaps if what this company is saying is we're bridging the gap, so like all of your pre-existing software will just run, right? And we're the middle, almost like a hypervisor layer, if you will, like in virtualization speak, we're kind of the secret sauce, the in-between that allows it to work. I think it's got a huge promise because, software developers wouldn't have to rewrite anything to take advantage of some of this older hardware. I think if that's what they're onto, that's going to be really, really cool. And certainly, it would give old hardware new life. And, one of the things I literally was just watching the other day, I don't know if any of you guys out there watch Linus Tech Tips, huge YouTuber, does all the tech reviews. He was just talking about downscaling, all of their typical work computers because what do most of us do? Email, web
word
browser,
processing.
super,
Yeah,
super lightweight stuff. You don't
yeah,
need 256 gigs of RAM and 64 threads to open up Chrome, right? So it's like a lot of times I think many of us just want the latest and greatest, the super high horsepower. And sure, there's applications for that. Like gamers, they want the 4090s. They need the frame rates, the super low latency monitors and everything like that. But for the majority, you don't really need that. So, and it kind of reminds me of the little Raspberry Pis that kind of have their little place in the ecosystem too, right? A little bitty tiny box you could technically browse the web and check your email on. So, where's the balance? I think it's pretty cool.
yeah. Indeed, indeed. I would love to hear from anybody listening what you think. Would this tech keep you from buying something new, or does this just help facilitate, the next level of what we already have? Here's my point of view. I love the idea that we can take something and, short of saying repurpose it, maybe use it in a new way. We know that worldwide we're going through some shortages with
Mm-hmm.
GPUs and other companies that are really need to get their hands on things for AI, other computational things, all of those things that parse through even the metadata. This can help. We have stuff that we already have that we can sort of reuse or sort of repurpose to go back at it. But at the same time, I think technology needs to move forward, and that means new form factors, new iterations, new ways of doing things that push us to that next level. So, to Anthony's point, I really think we need both. And if my parents wanted to come and say, hey, we're going to give you this 40-year-old car, but don't worry, we've done some upgrades because it runs like new, the answer is going to be a hard no from you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It just reminds me, the Steam Deck. It's a handheld gaming device I use. I have an OLED version. And right when Valve released the OLED version, they also released a color profile for the LCD version that makes it look near OLED. So, for years, I guess it's been out for years. I don't know how long it'd been out at the time, but like we'd been on a, subpar LCD screen with, not the best colors. They drop an OLED and they also right alongside it drop some, a profile that gives you, I would say it's 90% of the way there. So their existing users don't get the FOMO and maybe not everyone needs to upgrade and throw away their old version, unlike what I did, because I'm just a freak when it comes to this kind of stuff. But like, it's good. I think it's good. It's great that everyone gets the opportunity to experience some kind of quality or some kind of upgrade without just having to spend more money or get more thing. Like, we should always do our part to be better when we can be.
Well, and here's the other big, I guess, point in all this is like, where does the hardware end of life come into decision making? And I'll give you an example. And Sterling, you will like this one.
Mm.
So, still sticking with the Apple ecosystem, right? How many of you have had an iPad that eventually you go to update it and it says it no longer supports the updates? And now your end of life, you literally can't update it to the latest,
Right.
iPad OS. And now certain applications you can no longer download. I'm dealing with this right now. I mean, my two kids have several generation old iPads because they
Mm.
just, watch Netflix here and there. Now Netflix won't even install on one of them, right? Because it's to that point. So it's like, where in this whole journey does something like this become very useful? So, like, in other
Mhm.
words, if we could take what you're talking about, overlay it on some of this old hardware to allow it to have new life, not even faster, just work the way it used to work, that's something that would also be really intriguing, horsepower and performance aside.
Agreed.
Yep. I love it. And to our audience, what do you guys think? Like, if you had the opportunity, would you optimize something in your life? I'm curious what that something would be if you could draw a little bit more horsepower out of it, given the opportunity. So let us know. Post in the comments, and we'll give you a shout out to what you put out there.
Yeah.
Matt, what do you got for us this week?
Speaking of horsepower, this is
Oh,
not
is that a
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
layup? I didn't even mean to.
this isn't exactly it's not in a perfect segue, but close. All
Yeah.
right, so let me show you guys this. So I'm sure that you guys have
Oh
seen the
no.
drones.
Oh, here we go.
We've
Here
talked
we
about
go.
drones in the past. We talk about, I've got the DJI first person viewer drone. Anthony's been, in the drone world. This is something that I'm sure that many of you have seen or heard about in the news, and certain regions are testing out this whole drone delivery platform. What I thought was hilarious is I was just trying to search to see how far this had come, because I definitely saw it. It's been over a year ago that they were talking about doing some pilots of this stuff.
Hmm.
And you come down here and they literally have an app that looks like Uber Eats. And apparently, if
Nice.
you're in North Carolina and then out in one spot in Texas, you can test this. So I'm curious, do we have any viewers from Durham, Holly Springs, or Granbury, Texas, or whatever that could test this for us? But I have, like, look at this. It looks just like Uber Eats, right? You can get on there, let me order a chocolate chip cookie, and my drone is going to deliver it to my backyard. I
So
I
this
have
is live today,
so
Matt?
many. It looks like it. As long as you're in one of those 3 region or 4 regions. I mean, I'm not, so I can't test it. But I have so many questions. Like, I see this drone flying around. The delivery mechanism looks like some kid is dropping a kite out of the sky. Like, to me, that's red flag number 1. So even if the drone is able to take off, go directly to the pin, how is this payload gonna make it without somebody getting wrapped up in the cord and, the drone crashing down, or it's windy and it gets knocked into the house? I applaud the technology for, people trying to use some of this new future, tech like drones. Battery life, we all know what battery life does. I was watching a review on the Tesla Cybertruck. They advertised what, 340 miles of range. Dude towed a 10,000-pound Hummer and got like 90 miles of range. So it's like, what happens with the payload weight? How's
Yeah.
that going to affect battery life? And I mean, talk about the insurance you must have to have. What if this is in inclement weather and it crashes in somebody's yard? Who's liable? What happens if it crashes and hits your dog? Who's who's liable? So there's so many questions. I just wanted to get y'all's take on this. Like, the pros to it though could be exponentially faster delivery. And I did watch a documentary like last year where, forget where it was, but it was somewhere, um, I wanna say, like, in India. It was somewhere on the other side of the world, at least from me, and they were doing delivery mechanisms for medicine. like using this stuff. And it wasn't just a drone. It was like an airplane drone, like literally a, unmanned plane. And it would go over a predetermined spot and drop medicine with a parachute. And I'm like, now that's brilliant, because you just drop it on a little parachute. Somebody can go over there and get it. It's not having to suck back up anything, retract where something could get caught in the line, and it could get to them super quick. So I think it has potential. I just don't know if it's ready for like Amazon. What's y'all's take on it?
I gotta read a comment. Unfortunately, it didn't show me the name. It just said LinkedIn user, but they said, I'd like to see it delivered where there's a hungry dog or a raccoon hanging out in the backyard.
Right?
Yes. Just yes. That's the image.
That's
the
good.
image I wanted in my mind.
That's good.
This is one of those things. I think every week there's a topic where I say, there's not much we can do about it. It's the future. Get used to it. I think this is going to be one of those things. Like, unfortunately, our skies, they used to be clear, and then we put airplanes in them and then helicopters, and now we've got the potential for this. And if you've ever been around one of these things, they're loud. And the blades spin very fast. So I do have concerns about like birds and noise and, things that normal human beings should probably be concerned about. But there is a lot of potential here. And I will say, with automation, artificial intelligence, this gets a car off the road, right? Like, this is one less vehicle, either using gas or electricity, piloted by a human on our streets that we pay taxes for to keep, functional. If we could switch to this in mass and have drones instead of cars, like, what would that do to delivery and, roads and our ecosystem? That's just what I'm thinking about. Like, there is a trade-off that can be made here, and I'm working through it, but I think it does have potential to be better if we do it right. Sterling, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to agree with you. The technology is there. I think we have a long way to go. Unfortunately, when I think about this right now today, I think about those poor little wheel-powered drones that they were trying to use in some cities to deliver, and there were all of these pictures of people kicking these things over and taking bats to them. And so, unfortunately, that was one of the first things I thought about there. But I do think it's coming. The mass adoption. I still think we're a little ways off on that, Anthony. I think there are some serious questions around, like you said, the propellers and inclement weather and those types of things. But when you're talking about rescue missions and you're talking about needing to get some of these things in, let's just say they're hikers at a certain place that people can't get to them soon, but we can drop them things to medicate or to feed them. I think that part of the technology, it's ready for use right away, and I'm really glad to see uh, these types of things coming around. I think I saw some, maybe it was a YouTube video or it was an Instagram or something where they're also putting like these sort of blades on like motorcycles, and people are experimenting with it. Listen, I don't know, but somebody's going to try something really silly one time, and I think we're going to see all that as well.
Hey,
so technology is coming.
Yeah, no, it's coming faster than we can shake it. Wasn't Ryan Post was on the show last week, and doesn't he live near here?
He does live in North Carolina. Ryan, if you're watching, ping us.
I think what we need to do is order Ryan some food before next week's episode, and then have him report back in and let us know what the experience is like.
That would be epic.
That's a great idea.
Like my thing that I was talking about earlier. Look at this. Orders are gently lowered from 80 feet. So all I can think about is you've got this little basket with your supplies. We all know what wind does. If a drone's up there and it drops this thing down from 80 feet, it's going to start blowing in the wind. It's going to get wrapped around something, a power line. And so they've got a lot of, let's just say R&D they still got to do, I think, before they're ready for the mainstream.
I don't know if I could see this working in dense cities just yet.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's harder in denser areas for sure. And I think it's just, the more people there are in an area, the harder it's going to be too, right? Just if you're dropping it in a crowd, if you're at a concert and you have this thing fly over and drop something, I want a burger in the middle of the concert, it's not going to land on you. It's going to land on someone, 10 feet away, and they're going to get your burger. So yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely bugs to be worked out, but I do really think this idea has potential.
Well, there's no reviews yet. Maybe Ryan can be the first app reviewer.
Yeah, Ryan. All right. We're gonna sick Ryan Post on this and see how it do. All right. Well, and I think it's interesting, right? Like our whole theme this month is simplicity. And we've been talking about technology that's always going to make our life better and easier. So I thought in typical Anthony fashion, I'd be counter to that today. But when this happened, when I saw this happen, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be our topic for Zero Gravity Live this week. And I'm going to have to break it down because we're about to get a little bit nerdy here. So,
oh boy, let's do it.
Firstly, gentlemen, are you familiar with the game Apex Legends?
I'm not.
Not sure I am.
Apex Legends is a competitive shooter, first-person shooter. It's played with lots of people simultaneously. So teams of 3 will drop in from space, and they will try and like scour the map to find weapons, guns, whatever, armor, and they'll encounter other teams as they do this. It's a battle royale like Fortnite or any other game, but it's very popular. There's a tournament that's happening right now in the tournament, which has some of the best players in the world. Right in the middle of their rounds, they noticed things were happening on their computers that shouldn't have been happening. So I'm going to show you a little clip here. It'll be a little confusing. I've muted it because obviously there's some unsavory language when people start getting hacked and no one wants to see that. So you'll notice like this little box just showed up on a screen, and now you can just see text everywhere. And that's because this gentleman can now see everyone on the map, which you should not be able to do. And this just happened while he's playing his game in his house on his home PC in a professional tournament. Like he's like, I'm not cheating, but it says I'm cheating. He's streaming, so everyone sees that he is quote unquote cheating, and that's what happened. So what we have found out after this incident is this happened to lots of people in this tournament. There is a utility called Easy Anti-Cheat, which basically ensures that things like hacking, cheating, any sort of malbehavior doesn't occur during these games, has been compromised. And because Easy Anti-Cheat has been compromised, basically anyone playing Apex Legends online or streaming it can now be funneled through into their personal computer as a tunnel, and anything could be installed on their computer device. So one, if you're playing any games right now, if you're watching the show and you're playing games that use Easy Anti-Cheat, maybe don't, and especially don't stream them, because then you've just made yourself a target. But two, this is a totally new vector for attack, right? Like the actors are watching streams, they're looking for a vulnerability in a third-party utility on the game you're playing, and then they're using that to get access to your computer. So they were able to take down this tournament by doing this. But this is kind of uncharted territory now. Like now we're getting into new ways to make people's lives more miserable, and it's wild, y'all.
So it's now easy cheat.
That's crazy.
It's
not super easy cheat. You don't even cheat. Someone cheats on your behalf and ruins your tournament.
They just nix the anti out of it.
Wow. So this guy who we just saw the stream, he was compromised. But it almost seemed like he was given sort of those God level powers. He was able to see. Was everybody able to see everybody else? Is that what real?
It was certain people. So it was that, like, imagine if I can make an analogy here, that you're watching a basketball game, and suddenly, just through the act of the gods that be, certain players started to, their feet were on fire and they could run twice as fast. And just like, well, why can this one run twice as fast? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't choose to have this given to me. So it's just a complete and total disruption of what is fair, not chosen by anybody, but a third-party malicious attacker. So like, it's a really weird kind of breach and attack. And what they're saying, through this tunnel, this Easy Anti-Cheat application, they could install ransomware, malware, whatever they want. They decided to give this person godlike powers, but that's, that was a bit of like trollish behavior. it could be much worse. And it probably is. I bet you a lot of people's computers were infected if they've streamed Apex Legends in the last few days. They're saying you might even need to do a full factory refresh if you've streamed and you've played anything with easy anti-cheat. Just worth knowing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That's really interesting. I was reading a couple of articles recently, and this is sort of tangentially sort of related, but um, how the bad guys are finding new ways to sort of re-engineer and get into our stuff, and
Yeah.
having the good backups, and having to, all these things are so much more prevalent now that all of it, you close one door, they open three more. And I think this is just the fact that this person trolled them
Mhm.
and actually gave them godlike powers to just say, I could have done anything, here's what I did. It just shows you that we're only at the tip of the iceberg of understanding what we're up against and keeping our data
Yeah.
safe.
We
isn't
really
it?
are. And that is exactly it. Like, this is a vector no one had ever thought about going down before. And I'm not sure how many people knew about this exploit. Easy Anti-Cheat put out a statement today that's like, no, we're not compromised. So yes, you are. But like, yeah,
Come
like
on.
this is happening in real time. Like, this whole event is unfolding, and it's
Yeah.
become like a huge point of viewership for the internet because it's just so unprecedented, right? Like, this is not a way that we think about attacking. We think of zero-day exploits going after companies. We don't think about going after like streamers or celebrity type people. And if they can do it to them, they can do it to anybody. So it's just one more way. I love the comment someone posted about, we got to make it obviously wasn't immutable, but yeah, like, if you're using your personal gaming PC and you have important files on there, they're not backed up, there's a new way that you can lose your data. Congratulations. Like, it's 2024 and things still suck. Like, it's rough out there.
Yeah, for sure.
I go back to the good old days when you had to use your modems and dial someone direct point to point. There was no internet. There was no middleman. There was no, keylogger, none of that. It's like, I'm going to play you head to head. We're bypassing the internet. Those were the good old days when everything was much simpler, right? But you're right. It's like
We,
new
we may
new
end up
day,
there.
different challenge, different vector, and it's not going to slow down. It's not like they're going to disappear. They're just going to keep figuring out different ways and different loopholes and different methods to gain entry to exploit data. I mean, it's the world we live in.
That is
You know, Oh yeah, I was just going to say, nowadays I'm really interested. I thought it was interesting what you just said, Anthony. The company was just like, "Oh no, we were hacked, we're fine." When we in our industry, probably everyone watching and some of that aren't in the industry, we all know that we have to assume breach
mm-hmm.
nowadays. We have to plan for these things. We have to understand that they're probably in there. We even talk a lot about on this call the amount of time that that the threat actors spend within the environment before they even make themselves known. This is exactly what we're talking about. Those guys just didn't pop in there just then and give him godlike powers. They probably had been there for some time exploring what they could
Mm-hmm.
do. And so I think this is a very good point, Anthony, to go back for everybody watching, professionally, personally, to think about your data and to assume that somebody already has control over it. And what are you going to do to plan to be able to keep that data solvent,
Yep.
I
right?
love that, Sterling. That is the takeaway I think we all need to have, not just from this event, from most of them, is things can always be worse than you expect them to be, because technology, as we've seen on this show, is growing at a rate that is outpacing our ability to understand it. But someone out there does understand it, and they understand it way better than we do, and they're going to take advantage. And that's exactly why, like, we talk about simplicity for this month, and we talk about how important it is. And I recently wrote a blog all about how, you can see it if you scan the little QR code next to Matt's head. If you scan that QR code, you'll see the blog. It's simplicity can lead to security. And by simplifying and focusing on, what is it that is important? What is it that I need to narrow down to the thing that I'm looking to protect, that I'm looking to secure, that I'm looking to ensure that is recoverable? When you focus and you kind of throw away all the extra crap, then you start to gain better control. Then you start to have a better understanding of things. We're human beings. Like, we use AI because AI can handle complex, massive amounts of information. But we can remember a 7-digit phone number, or we used to be able to. Now we don't anymore. Like, we need simplicity in our lives, and we absolutely need it when it comes to protecting our data and ensuring that we're recoverable at all times. So give the blog a read if you haven't. I spent a good amount of time thinking about like what that meant from a backup perspective. And here at Object First, we love the idea of simplicity. Our entire product is built to be simple. 15 minutes of configuration, never touch it again. So it does mean a lot to us. And I think thinking about things like we talked about today with the cheating and the drones and everything, it's time that we step back and evaluate, like, what does this mean for us and what can we do to protect ourselves and the data around us in the most simple way possible.
Yep. Completely agree, man. I think just as a final thought, maybe as we wrap the show up today, for me, you kind of mentioned drones again, Anthony. When you think about all these different ways and these attack vectors, no solution is going to stop all the 0 days. If
Right.
there were, it would be a perfect solution and there would be no ransomware. The challenge is when you start looking into these things, like using drones as an example, what happens when somebody infiltrates the flight apparatus or mechanism of these drones, right? Because I was reading and it's going to be, no pilots, it's all automated, just like, unmanned aerial vehicles. But even some of those still have a pilot behind the controls. These are going to be, nope, take off, go to this pin on the map, drop it, come back. What happens when somebody hacks that? Are they going to crash drones into your houses, into the middle of the highway, or what's going to happen? So I think keeping an idea and kind of keeping technology in check with guardrails and security and basically hardened operating systems internally that don't have any outside access, that basically can't be compromised in some way, I think is going to become more critical, as technology develops, because anything that's exposed to the outside world is hackable. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So the only way to truly prevent that is to put something that's so quarantined potentially on board that literally has no outside access. The only way somebody could alter it is literally having the device, plugging in something, making modifications. And at that point, you still have physical security, to keep in mind and worry about. So there's just all kinds of different things that's advancing rapidly in the technology world, but it just increases the significance that we place on security and making sure that you've got a backup and a place to recover from if things do go sideways. And to me, that's kind of the message that I've taken away from this session. Is it's like, look, there's all kinds of different ways that you can be compromised. You brought up one I'd never even heard of, Anthony. It's like a man in the middle on cheat codes for streaming games, right? But if you had a mutable backup of, let's say, that gaming PC, well, guess what? You can restore before that, compromise was implemented, essentially. There's also got to be a way that you can test which one of those was non-compromised, right? Before you go do a recovery. So lots of things to consider, and we're just here to make it simple for you at Object First. So that's my
That's right.
takeaway. How about you, Sterling?
Well said. I mean, there's really not much more to add. You pretty much slam dunk that. I mean, the idea of the simplicity, I think, is going to become more prevalent as we see all of these things, new ways we have to quarantine data, new ways that, I mean, I don't know, Matt, did you just invent immutable drone memory? I mean, I don't know, because we're going to need, to your point,
Yeah.
we're going to need some of those things that are going to propel us into the next stage. But just as everything else in life, if it becomes too complicated, people won't adopt it. We have to find that balance.
Yeah, it can't be RAM. It's got to be ROM, right?
Exactly right.
Well, I love it, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure getting to hang out and chat with you all about, the new and terrifying ways that our lives can be upended any moment by bad actors out there. So thank you again for joining me on Zero Gravity Live. And hey, thanks to our audience. Some great comments, conversations that came from y'all today. Appreciate you joining us every week and watching. Be sure to share this with your friends if you think they'll enjoy it. And we're just happy to be here with you. So as always, stay weightless, stay frictionless, and stay zero gravity.
See you guys.